All right, Harrison. Here's a college game day, I guess, themed question that I'm sure
Oh boy.
everybody thinks about all the time, especially since when we went to a school with the mascot of Owls, and people are like, "Oh, Owls is such a common name." I looked that shit up, and it was only four schools. So, for you, what is the most overused slash overrated game day mascot for
Oh
college?
man. Um. Well, man. For one, I'm excited college football's back, so I'm glad you're talking about it or bringing it up.
Right,
But I think it's got to be a tiger. I think it's. I think it's the Tigers.
Los Tigres.
Los Tigres. um. I
Mm,
mean, just two of the big ones off the top of my head is Auburn and LSU.
yeah, that's true.
Even though Auburn goes by like
War Eagle.
25
Yeah.
different names. Um, what about you? Because I think it's Tigers because looking at it here, I think there's what 14 of the 14 schools that are Tigers, or 13 or 14 schools that are
13.
Tigers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gosh, we should just do a trivia night. It was like, all right, we'll do Family Feud style, list all 14 schools.
Oh gosh.
But obviously, since we're in Georgia, you gotta hand it to the most overrated name of all time is the Bulldogs. Like, come on, like, who thought like when you look at a bulldog, sure, you look at them as vicious things, but also they've been overbred to death where they literally just a
I can't breathe.
yeah, they can't breathe, they can't move, but somehow it's the most popular mascot name in all of college football. Or I guess just college mascots in general. So it's like,
Well, I think that's probably because the shorthand for bulldog is bully. So if your mascot's a bulldog, you'd be bullying people on the football field. I guess I don't know. I
I
don't
thought
know.
you were gonna go the other way and say the shorthand would just be dog.
What up, dog?
What up, dog?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Marching Arts Podcast, your guide to all things marching. I hope you are doing super well today. um,
But
Jeez.
anyways,
Yeah.
um,
Anyways,
I guess lead us into it, Harry boy.
well, I mean, if we're talking about college, there's a bunch of different things that we can talk about, and especially with regarding to the marching arts, there's a lot of different things that go into a game day
Mm-hmm.
that people don't see typically on a high school level. Like where I'll start, to kind of kick us off would be one of the main differences between a high school band and a college band is that in high school there's usually a booster program that the parents run or the director runs it and the parents contribute. Um, but at the college level, there's usually two or three organizations that'll run that kind of financial aspect to the band. The first one is the university itself. Um, a lot of them will consider the marching band or the marching area part of athletics, so they work that into their budget. But other schools don't, like Kennesaw doesn't. So,
Right.
um,
Rip.
I mean, that's just is what it is. But and then the other two programs that kind of financially support those bands, one are the alumni organizations, which historical programs have really, really big ones. Like Iowa has a huge one, and Michigan has a phenomenally run one. So that's another way. The third way, and you're repping the shirt, is fraternities. Or there's a few music based fraternities. One of them is Kappa Kappa Psi, which you and I are both part of.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's Tau Beta Sigma, that's the sorority, which are both co-ed. And also, I didn't know if you heard, but at the national level, they're actually in the process of merging. So
Huh.
at least the alumni groups are,
I
not
was about to say.
the active ones. Um, and then another one is well, I don't know if they do is um,
Find you?
Phi Mu Alpha, yeah. And I don't know because I know they're more music business.
Hmm.
So I don't know if they're specifically into the marching arts. But all of those to say is that there's three different avenues that bands usually get money. It's either through the university, through an alumni group, or through a fraternity.
Hmm. Isn't
Um,
there one more that's like a band fraternity? Um, that's sort of like KKSI and TBS.
well, there's SAI.
Oh, I was thinking there was like another one, like completely separate from those four. Um,
Probably.
Let me check. It might be Pi Kappa Lambda.
Oh, I don't know. I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah.
Alphabet super fraternities. Greek life,
It's
baby.
oh, it's an honor society, so that's might be the difference.
Oh, okay.
All right.
But yeah, I think that's where I would start it off. Like, what differs, from the day to day on those? That's something I would start. Was that the band's usually student run all the way around, or it's just funded through the
Yeah,
university?
and I would say the biggest difference would just be the length of the game day itself.
Yeah. Like another difference would be like at high school, usually you have your pregame rehearsal a lot of times for
For an
a couple
hour
hours,
max. Well,
right? And then you have the game, and that's it.
yeah,
But at the college level, it is an all day affair. Like you get up early, you have rehearsal first thing in the morning, and then you might eat something, and then you got to go do all of these traditional like
pre-game
walks and
festivities. Yeah,
right, and then you got to be there when the team shows up, and then you got to do like a lot of groups will do parades into the stadium, and a lot of those are super serious, like LSU's. They don't talk.
right,
Like during the parade, and with the amount of fans and stuff, the people on the outside, they put their bigger people on the outside, so that people try to get into the block, they stiff arm them
right.
out of the block. So little things like that, you got to do that all day, and then you sit there for the game. That's what? How long would you say a game is?
Well, Kennesaw is blessed because we only run triple option, so it's what 3 hours usually. But other schools, I'm sure it can be 4.5 hours when it's all said and done, especially if it's nationally televised.
Right, and imagine if you're outdoors through all that. I mean,
Yeah.
and then after that, you have to clean everything up. Um,
Hmm.
So, and a lot of the little things like that, the fraternities help out with, the alumni groups help out with things like that. So, it's a lot more student involved than staff run.
Yeah.
Um, is a big difference there. But also game days are just crazy awesome for college.
Yeah. Um. Again, like I guess that's just an important distinction of in high school the parents are the adults. In college, everybody's an adult. So
Right. And with that too, and I'm not super familiar with it, but you know, how do they feed those people? Like, is it just catered, or are they what? Like, how does this work?
I guess it really just depends on the program. What for Kennesaw it was usually catering, and
Right.
Kennesaw used to have a coordinator for all things like ops. Not sure what's going on right now, but at some point it's somebody's job at Kennesaw to find out the budget, find out the budgets for all the catering options, and then select all the different meal plans for the rest of the season, and just hopefully not make it too monotonous and take some feedback from the students. And I imagine maybe some bigger programs, maybe they can get away with like getting sponsored meals. um
That's true. I feel like at a bigger level, because I know that Kennesaw does the catering thing and they call
right.
for every game. But I like at a bigger university, I wonder, and somebody chime in on this for us, if you have like a dedicated person that handles like your meals, like a dedicated restaurant, I should say, or
Right.
or food service that like is just for like only it has like a partnership with your
Yeah.
band.
And with the Chick-fil-A Bowl coming up, I'm wondering if the bands who go to the Chick-fil-A Bowl, do they just get like free Chick-fil-A meals, or do they still have to pay for that, or do they just pay a really discounted rate? Like you would
Oh, they
think.
probably still pay full price.
Oh, dang.
It's a stadium, dude. What do you expect? They might give it a discount, but then the stadium's got to make money off of it. So
But I mean,
ends
if
up
like
being.
Chick-fil-A is sponsoring, you think like Chick-fil-A would just handle all that?
I mean, I guess, but like on, with the same thing on that, any other bowl, like the Rose Bowl. So you're saying when people show up, they can get discount on roses?
But I mean, like, that's different because, like, the Rose Bowl is, like, synonymous with that stadium, whereas the Chick-fil-A Bowl, it's, like, at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and, like, Chick-fil-A essentially takes over the sponsoring for that, like, weekend of games at that stadium. Does that make sense?
No, yeah, it does. I just, I was trying to use that kind of logic, but
I mean, I guess.
um, I don't know. And I do know that water's pretty simple because most of the time the building will have like water fountains, or like they'll have like hoses and stuff to fill up water jugs and things. So
You would hope so.
I would, yeah, that's true. I don't know if that's true for every
Yeah, because that
program.
Kennesaw, didn't they pre-fill all the water jugs at the student facilities and then bring them
Yeah,
over?
that's what I was saying. The facility has
Oh,
the hoses and
I
stuff.
thought you were saying like at the stadium itself.
No, some stadiums have it. Like I remember when I was at State at the Dome, they had
Mm-hmm.
them underneath the underneath like where everybody sits in the tunnels, so that
Right.
like if we ever ran out, they would just refill and bring them
Oh,
back.
okay, that's cool.
Um, but I know that's not the case everywhere. So,
Yeah.
um, what about uniforms?
What about uniforms?
Well, like at the high school level, uniforms, you typically, you're responsible for it, and then and then when the day's done, you just kind of turn it back in, or you got to fold it up, make sure it looks good, or some places make you clean it. Dude, not often, but some places make you clean it. Um,
So, I guess since you went to two different colleges, was the experience any different for you between like Kennesaw and GSU?
well, um, not really. We would turn in the uniform after the game,
Mm-hmm.
and they would get washed or dry cleaned.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but we had to hold on to it the entire time. Like at Kennesaw, they would hold on to them and then bring them out like closer to game day.
Mm-hmm.
But at Georgia State, we held on to them.
Okay.
So basically, whenever they came back from dry cleaning, it was our
Right.
responsibility to grab it.
Time to pick it up.
Yeah.
I know Kennesaw, I guess, would be halfway in between like a fully independent college system where it's like, yeah, you're responsible for your uniform, you drop it off on dry cleaning days, you pick it up after it gets dry cleaned. But I know in high school it was like it would be game day, you'd put on your uniform from the rack, you'd put it on, finish the game, put it back on the rack, it'd be cleaned, and then, just rinse and repeat every single Friday until the end of the season. Which I guess makes more sense because there is less of a risk of getting lost. But I guess in college, I guess it all just depends on how big the program is and like if they
Well, yeah,
trust
and
you.
yeah, and also, talking about uniforms, it also depends on the activity, because in college it's not just football.
Yeah,
Because you got, there's basketball bands, volleyball game, there's hockey
mm,
sometimes,
right. Even sometimes
um,
soccer.
and sometimes soccer. I haven't seen that, but I believe you.
Hmm.
Um, and uh, and on a lot of those they don't do full uniform, or
Right.
they,
Yeah, they
or
just
they'll like just do bibbers,
hmm
or
a
they just wear a
shirt.
band T-shirt. Yeah.
Yeah,
So, and that all works into the same budget as well for the uniform, because you have to figure out, do you want them to be uniformed at those events too? Which
yeah.
I hope not, but that'd be dreadful. I did basketball and volleyball band. That's not fun.
What,
If you
in
had to wear,
uniform?
well, if you had to do it in uniform. I never had to wear a full uniform in
All
those.
right.
But I can imagine how unfun that would be.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine like the band still wants to represent their brand, so they just gotta find that fine line of, hey, we need to look good as a group, and we don't want to spend, money dry cleaning uniforms after a a smaller group performance.
Yeah. So I guess it all comes down to preference then for how uniforms are handled. But generally speaking, it's pretty similar. You grab uniform, wear it, turn it back in, it gets cleaned.
Yeah,
And then directors have the oh so wonderful responsibility in having to budget to get them cleaned all the time, um, which is a pain in the ass. So
yeah. I can't imagine how much like salesman skills you need as a either director, or if like the director doesn't want to do it, the ops person who's in charge of like doing that, because obviously you don't want to just have to pay full price, especially if you can get discounts, especially when you are ordering for hundreds of people.
Yeah. A lot of times it's not necessarily so much salesman ability, just more so, follow up and negotiation. Because really, these places that you call for that kind of thing have rates for that kind of a thing. So you really just
Right.
call and be like, hey, would you be willing to do this for this day? And if they say no, then you're on to the next one.
Right.
Not so much sales, though. I guess it depends on where you're at. If you don't have a whole bunch of chain places, you might have to call places and be like, hey, I need 300 sandwiches, bro. What you got?
Right.
They'd be like, 300 sandwiches? Yeah, on Friday.
Yeah, on Friday. But today's Thursday evening.
Right. So, yeah, I'd be calling. I don't know who I would call if it was Thursday night. I also probably would never let it get to that point, but I'm sure it's happened.
Yeah, I'm sure it's happened.
God, those bosses got to offer so much overtime to those employees to make that happen. Golly.
But also, if you ever request a marching band to show up to something, please give them plenty of advance notice, because there is a ton of planning that goes in. It's not just, oh, we'll load them onto school buses and drive them somewhere.
Oh my gosh, plan months, like been done, have it planned at least like 45 days in advance.
Right.
Like, and that's like cutting it close.
Yeah.
I would, ideally to be 60. But like 45 days, like that's the
bare minimum.
Unless it's an extreme circumstance like playoffs.
Yeah.
Playoffs, you can't really plan for that. So you can't just assume. Well, I mean, you can plan for it, but like you can't really make a move on it until you're actually there.
Yeah. Which makes me wonder if like lots of places maybe just do like contingency contracts. Like if this happens, it's signed and good for this day, but if it doesn't happen, then just throw it in the trash.
Yeah, it might be.
Or maybe even just offer like a retainer fee of like 2% or something. Just be like, hey, yeah, we'll pay you 2% now just in case this happens. But if it doesn't, at least you keep 2% for sitting down with us and hashing out a plan.
Yeah, fair enough. That's right. Yeah. So I guess that's to your point earlier. I guess that does involve a little bit of sales. Knowledge and ability.
Yeah, because also like if you're repping the Ohio State marching band, like you got that whole brand name of the Ohio State behind you, so I'm sure there's lots of places that would be lining up to do whatever service you were asking for.
I am sure, because at that point again, so we go back to the conversation of a bigger university. You got people buying to want to support your band. Right. Whereas smaller schools, or like in Kennesaw's case, we gotta,
reach out
and try to get somebody. So, it's interesting for that, and especially at like the high school level, because there's a lot more high schools than there are colleges.
Yeah.
High schools do that same thing, but also there's some that are like, yeah, you're on your own, kid.
Yeah.
So, so I don't know. It's interesting, and to kind of go back a little bit on these types of things and those like types of game days, fraternities help a lot with that. The Greek life, so like Psi specifically, or Kappa Psi, I should not abbreviate for people who don't know. Kappa Psi is a service fraternity for music, so anything they're there to support the college and university bands and be there for the program to help out anywhere it needs to. So a lot of times fraternities will take a hold and take a step in that to try to help lock down some stuff for the university,
right,
or the band. Same thing with Tau Beta Sigma. It's I think on a college game day there is a lot more in-depth processes that happen than a high school, mainly just because it's a longer day, but there's just a lot more to deal with, and the program is typically bigger than the high school is.
Absolutely.
So there's just a lot more people to deal with,
and it's like, yeah, there's more people to deal with, but also just the fact like the high school is a pretty much a closed ecosystem, whereas a college, it's much more open because like yeah, a lot of times the school might not even own their stadium, or they might be renting like the stadium. So like there's there's just a lot more departments that need to be conversing, even if it's just on one small thing like just seats in the stadium. When high school, it's like yeah, you go to that high school, therefore you like automatically have those seats free, and
Right.
like sure the school might take a hit on certain prices, but I mean if they've always priced in having a marching band, it's like they never really lost money on that. Whereas
Right.
like if you're a Kennesaw where you're leasing the stadium, it's like well technically you are losing money if the band isn't repaying for those seats. So
Right.
and then again, like again, since you are repping the university as a whole, you basically got to get approval from the university on almost anything you do.
Yep. And that makes it hard to kind of build traditions, build, that kind of a setup. Um I think, or I guess I have a question on that then. So, I know the director does a lot of that, um, decision making. But
Hmm.
how much does the staff or like student techs and things get in there to kind of help with that? Because I know they're a little different. Because right, because staff usually has a longer contract and
Right.
things like that, and student techs are on a shorter term basis. But how much decision power do you think they have on that kind of thing?
Probably not that much, at least in college, because it's pretty much cut and dry what their contract says, and they're getting paid to do what their contract says to do. Whereas in maybe in high school, the contract might be much more loosey goosey, if that makes sense. Where it's like, yeah, you can do all these, and then there's probably just a blank, or not blank line, but like just a blanket statement of like, and anything else the director may need. Whereas
Right. Yeah.
college, where it's probably like, yeah, you're much more professional. You might be an associate professor at the school, um, or like maybe in another. You might have another job doing something else. So I think those duties that you're required of are probably much more strict in a sense. So maybe there might be more leeway for like the student techs, who are like are part of the band, but they're not a performing member of the band. So if you don't know what that means, maybe like helping with equipment, helping run rehearsals, helping set up equipment. Um, I think I just said that again. Um, running like rehearsal itself. You know, other things that would just be like, hey, yeah, your duties are to help the band because you want to be here, and maybe we'll give you a small stipend to help out.
Yeah. Then that makes sense because I mean they're not fully in charge of the program, but they're part of the program.
Right. And whereas
Um,
high school, you would never have student tanks because again, the director would probably
right.
just be like, oh, you want to be part of the program? Oh, you don't know how to play? We'll teach you. Whereas in
Right.
there are some college programs that are like, yeah, you've never done marching band before, sure, you can join us. But it's much more common for the program to be like, yeah, you must have at least playing experience, and you must be able to, walk in time with the music as a
Yeah.
bare minimum.
Well, yeah. To that, a lot of the programs in the country will require an audition.
Right,
Um, even if it's not really an audition, it's just to make sure you know what you're doing.
right.
But yeah, college. I recommend if you're wanting to do college marching band and you're still in high school, go ahead and march with your high school.
Even if it's just for like
So you
one
know what you're
year,
doing.
yeah,
So you know what you're doing, and then you'd be that much more confident when you go to the college level.
yeah. Especially if you ever try to audition for a college band that has only a certain amount of spots, like you definitely need that experience.
Yeah, for sure. But there's such a there's we could talk on and on and on about college stuff. I think, and we don't want to spend 8 hours talking about one thing. But if you guys do have other things you're curious about for the college game day space, or you have any questions questions about anything else with regards to college band, because I know in the past we talk a lot about high school, but high school is kind of where it all starts. But in college, it's just as intricate, just as important to the art. So if you guys do have any questions, want us to talk about anything in particular, please give us a shout. Let us know on all the socials at the Marching Arts Pod. That's POD. Anywhere you get your podcasts, anywhere you can have your social media, we are there somewhere. And we can see you on the next one. So thank you for sticking around. This has been the Marching Arts Podcast, your guide to all things marching.